Right. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 suspension of certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, MGL, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the Easthampton Media website as soon as we are able. It is now 6:02. I will now call to order the July 13th, 2020 meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. This meeting is being recorded. I have several additional announcements to make before we address our agenda. Sudden meeting interruption. If any technical difficulties occur or the meeting ends abruptly, the hearing will be automatically administratively continued to the July 27th meeting at 6 p.m. This applies to all agenda items. For those who may be present from the public, only issues regarding how projects relate to the Wetlands Protection Act are under the purview of the Commission, and any questions or comments regarding other concerns such as traffic, zoning, etc., cannot be addressed by the Conservation Commission and can be addressed by the July 21st Planning Board meeting. Process for public comment in Zoom. All participants will be muted until it is time for public comments. Participants should use the raise hand function, and the agent will make note to call on them during the public comment section in the order they are received. And I will also ask for public comments when the floor is open for public comments. We request that no one utilize the chat function unless to request to make a comment to the agent. Any private chat conversations are automatically published as part of the transcript for the meeting as it is being recorded. So with that, we will move on to our first agenda item, public concerns and non-agenda items. Are there any at this time? Cass? Anything? Okay.
There are no comments.
Great. Moving on, public hearings and meetings. First item, public hearing continued from June 8th, 2020 public hearing, a bundled notice of intent filed by the City of Easthampton, Mass DEP file number 151307. The applicant is seeking an order of conditions for various routine, non-exempt maintenance activities.
I reached out to the city and did not hear back yet, so I believe they want to continue.
All right. Is there a motion to continue to the Commission's July 27th meeting at 6 p.m.?
Move to continue to the July 27th meeting at 6 p.m.
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Commissioner August?
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore?
Aye.
Commissioner Buttrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Did I miss anyone? Okay. Motion passes. Next item, public meeting, request for determination of applicability filed by R. Levesque Associates on behalf of Jeff Hunter, HRDD 56 LLC at 35 and 40 O'Neill Street, map 113 and 114, lots 6 and 16 for improvements within existing asphalt areas. I believe, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Good evening. Just as a way of introduction, my name is Philippe Cravo from R. Levesque Associates. Here tonight presenting the RDA application for the proposed site improvements at 35 and 40 O'Neill Street for the applicant. Let me see if I can just project the plan. Okay. Do you want, I mean, is that a capability for me to project the plan onto the screen here? Because it says I need
Cassie, can you help with this?
the host disabled participant screen sharing.
One moment, please.
Yeah, no worries. I guess in any case, a couple of highlighted points or points to highlight. would be that it's an existing developed property. We are not proposing to change any of the impervious area on the property. The applicant is proposing to change the use to a home heating and propane business. So there will be, I guess, the installation of a number of propane tanks on the facility, at the facility, as well as fleet storage for the home heating oil trucks. We filed the RDA for work related to an offsite wetland, which is offsite to the west. A portion of the property lies within the buffer zone to that wetland. And we're not, like I said, we're not proposing to change or alter any of the existing impervious area. All of the impervious area actually is pitched down gradient to a series of catch basins that are located on the property. So the areas on site do not discharge off site towards the wetland. They all drain towards the existing catch basins. As far as for the fleet storage of the home heating truck vehicles, they will be located within a containment tub or a containment area that, in case N1 ever does leak or has a catastrophic failure, there will be a containment area that will contain that sort of discharge from that vehicle. So it doesn't look like I can share my screen yet, so I'm just trying to talk my way through the plan. And that's really it. So, it's work within the buffer zone to an offsite wetland, just a change of use for a new business. And no change in impervious area. It all drains, all of the impervious area drains to on-site catch basins, hooded catch basins.
Well, while we're waiting to see if Cassie can give you the ability to share this or another site plan, I have a couple of questions. I don't know if other commissioners do. If not, I'll ask my questions. And one is an administrative question. Was a copy of the RDA sent to the property owner?
To the current property owner?
David Strong?
I'm not sure, but I can find out. I can't imagine it wouldn't have been.
Okay. That's just a point of clarification. When the applicant is not the owner, a copy must be sent to the owner. And the information on the signature page reiterates the applicant's information. So is there an intent to install an erosion control barrier such as a straw wattle, where I imagine the portion of chain link fence that is to tie into the existing chain link fence kind of in the northwest corner is
Right.
going to have some ground disturbance for posts?
We can typically, post hole diggers, looking at sort of a significant, like sort of topsoil clearing situation, but we can certainly do some sort of barrier to prevent any erosion into the down gradient to the wetland.
Okay, I think that is consistent with what this commission asked for under
Sure. Yeah,
in
that's
the buffer zone.
that's
Can you describe a little bit further the containment tub? It says on the site plan, there's a note with a call out that says minimum 6-inch depth. Can you talk a little bit about how that has been sized and what that will look like on the landscape and how it will be maintained?
Sure. So what's lacking on the plan that you're probably looking at is a rectangle, some sort of depiction of the tub area, and that's just a layer that probably got turned off when the plan was printed, unfortunately. So essentially, the guidance for that is that these containment areas be at least, I believe it was one truck and at least 20 for the 25-year storm event. So the 25-year storm event in Hampshire County is a 5.2-inch storm, 5 inches of rainfall over a 24-hour period. So that's where we, the 6-inch depth came into play. And then as far as the detail of what it looks like, it would just be sort of like a Cape Cod berm surrounding the area, built up to be 6 inches tall, and then being able to be driven over, just sort of a containment area in the case that there was ever a catastrophic leak from one of the trucks.
So you're saying it would completely encompass those spaces on the site plan there?
Yes, yep.
How many spaces is that?
1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Looks like there's 12 spaces along that edge of pavement there.
So that's the only area on the site that would be designated for fuel oil truck?
Yes.
Parking?
Yep. Within the containment area, absolutely.
A question was raised by Mark Stinson of DEP. He asked for clarification or confirmation that the stream that's identified as intermittent, how was that determined?
I believe, well, typically, as I'm sure you know, intermittent streams just need 4 consecutive days of dry weather. And our wetland scientist determined that. I will have, I can confirm with him as to how that was determined to be intermittent. But I would imagine that at the time he was there, he probably saw it being dry, and at least have the backup documentation for that.
I think that's something that the commission would want for its records.
Okay.
And that's something I would want before I would want to move forward, but it's subject to the whole commission. Are there any other questions or comments at this time from commission members?
The buildings are going to stay exactly where they are?
Yes, the buildings. So the site will remain as is, no new buildings. Yep.
Okay.
I have a question about drainage from the containment tub. How does that work if it's an enclosed area?
If without, short of putting some sort of sump in there, if one of those trucks ever did, you're talking like rainfall.
Rainfall.
Yeah. I would have to get some clarification on that. That's a good question. I'm not sure without having the detail of it, I'm not sure what they were planning on for that.
What I've seen before is either a sump and a pump system, or like a drain with a valve of some kind, but then it needs to connect to something. Does this site? Yeah, so it has current drainage that goes out to the road there. Yeah. So I mean, those are things that I would like to see clarified.
Yeah, typically, I know some of the details that we've done before that they would have. There's a sump, and we have done the contained sump and with a pump in it, but also drained off. I just don't know what that exact plan is here.
Okay.
Cassie, do you
Hi,
know?
sorry about that.
Do you know if, I assume Philippe is
Yes.
also speaking to the other application from Levesque? So I think will benefit from his ability to screen share with us.
Yeah, I'm going to do that now.
And then the other is administratively, do you know if the commission received documentation that the RDA was sent to the property owner as it's listed on the form? David Strong?
If you don't mind, I'm going to go run and grab the physical submittal that I got, and it should probably say on there. So hold on one second.
Philippe, do you have if you don't mind trying to share your screen with the site plan on it, just so we can see if that function was enabled?
Oh, yep, there we go. Got it.
Thank you.
Let's see here.
Melissa,
Yes, Michael.
is David Strong still the owner of the property? Because I know he retired and sold the business, or...
He's listed on the application as the property owner.
Okay.
So if he's not, then clarification of that as well.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So we should be looking at the site plan, right?
Correct.
I guess just as an overview, the BVW that I was talking about is off-site to the west here, the buffer zone, 100-foot buffer zone here. Edge of pavement is at the back of these parking stalls, and where it encroaches into the buffer zone is along this edge of pavement here. Then the fence would be up in this location. The extension of the fence to tie it into the existing fence.
And the existing fence line is not changing, so there's no further encroachment upon the resource area or
Right.
the buffer zone.
Correct.
If I'm looking in the right place on the RDA, it shows a Mr. Hunter as the property owner.
On the cover, it lists David Strong.
Okay. In the body of it,
Yeah, the applicant, I believe, the way that the application is that the owner was Mr. Strong, but the applicant was Mr. Hunter. That was the cover, and then I'm not sure.
Okay. So yeah, I'm not seeing anything that necessarily shows that it was sent. I have that the form itself was signed by, looks like Mr. Hunter.
Right, Cassie, the currently available online information suggests that that's not the owner.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess if it was,
I mean, I guess, Melissa, you're saying that the assessor's information found on the website, that's Mr. Strong?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, he's not on the call to say otherwise. Okay. Okay. I guess so. I have a couple things that just a couple items of clarification was obviously the owner was a copy sent to the owner, and if it was Mr. Strong, proof that it was sent to him. Documentation in regard to the intermittent stream, that would define it as an intermittent stream, the drainage within the sump area, and then also the erosion control along the fence extension.
Yep. So with that, and before we move on, I will ask, are there any further questions from members of the commission? Are there any members of the public in attendance who have a question regarding this item?
This is Dan Buttrick again. I'm sorry. I was fumbling with the mute button. I guess to expand on the sump and on the drainage of the containment area a little bit. It's been a long time since I've thought about those sorts of things, but I guess just confirmation that the discharge from that would be an allowable non-stormwater discharge under the different various rules would be good, just to do that research and confirm that.
Right.
As well as
right. Don't just pump oil into the catch basin.
Right. Right. And I know that wouldn't be the intent, but I think even with rainwater containment things from containment areas, things get a little weird where different regulatory programs overlap.
Yep. Okay.
And it may not even necessarily be our jurisdiction, but it might be at the same time.
I think the part of that is in what direction it's being drained and if it's a point source discharge.
Right. Yes. Well, I guess in any case, it would drain towards the let's just say the site, not off-site, hopefully towards the wetlands.
Right, but then it's to the storm drain system, and then to the O'Neill Street, storm drainage system, and in some ways the Conservation Commission is also, we in part do the stormwater permitting in conjunction with the city engineer too. So even if it's not quite a Wetlands Protection Act issue, is something that we do have some involvement with.
Okay. Kathy, has anyone raised their hand to make a comment from the public?
I haven't received any indication that there's any comments at this point.
So given the several outstanding items, we would like to, I imagine, continue to our next hearing, if that's all right with the applicant.
Sure.
All right. So is there a motion to continue?
A motion to continue to July 27th at 6 p.m.
Is there a second?
Aye.
All right. Roll call vote. Commissioner Buttrick?
Did I just hear a question come in from someone in the public?
Cassie?
I have not received any indication from the public.
Is there a question from the public?
Everyone should have the ability to unmute themselves, but I believe the majority of people here are for the next item.
Okay, I thought I heard some speaking, but it was sort of faint. Anyways, I will vote affirmatively for that motion relative to continuing.
August.
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan.
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood.
Aye.
So moved. So we will continue this discussion on our July 27th meeting. Next item on the agenda. Public hearing for a notice of intent filed by R. Levesque Associates, Inc. on behalf of Cynthia Steplar at 69 and 73 Loudville Road, maps 140 and 139, lots 28, 29, and 11, for a new 18-unit housing development, Mass DEP file number 151309. Would you please reintroduce yourself for the record?
Good evening. My name is Philippe Cravo from Arlevec Associates, here tonight representing the applicant, Ms. Cynthia Stepler, for the proposed notice of intent application for the proposed condominium multifamily development located off of Waterville Road. Give me a second. I'll try to share this document.
Administratively, before we progress too much further, Cassie, have you received confirmation of a butter notification?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and confirmation of the legal notice being published?
Yes, I have.
And we have the EP file number and comments. Philippe, is the applicant themselves, are they on the line for this?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. So with that, let's, can everyone see the plans that are being projected here? Great. So as the chair just said, we have received DEP comments. Most of them were pretty straightforward. They were in regard to stormwater management on the property. But I just wanted to walk through, I guess, the existing conditions, and then we can get into the proposed development. So currently on the property has frontage on Loudville Road. There's an existing single family or an existing building here that's closer to the frontage on Loudville. The property, once you get to the rear of essentially the frontage lots on Loudville, it opens up into a larger parcel out back behind those properties. The topography is generally sloping up until you hit a top of slope, and then it's a pretty significant slope that heads down towards a BVW, bordering vegetated wetland, offsite to the north. And that BVW is adjacent to a perennial stream that runs along the rear of the property in a west to east fashion, or east to west fashion here along the back, Hannum Brook. Throughout the site, we have a number of smaller isolated vegetated wetlands, identified one closer to the frontage. So as you come into the property, there's an isolated vegetated wetland off to the east. As you get towards the rear, there's a larger one to the west, and then a smaller one sort of straddling a finger-like projection off the BVW here in the center, an isolated vegetated wetland. The topography is such that, if I can zoom in here, you're up at about elevation 201 at the roadway, and then it generally slopes back at a pretty mild slope up until you hit the top of slope, and then the slope significantly drops off. So the majority of the development, or the entirety of the development, is up in these flatter portions of the property that are up here, up in the flatter areas. The site is mostly vegetated under the existing conditions. There is a large clearing that projects behind the existing building out towards the north, towards the top of the slope, towards the rear of the parcel. But other than that, it looks like there's some trails with some other, with another clearing here. But other than that, it remains mostly wooded vegetation. If I can move on in the plan set. Notes. The demolition and removals plan. So as part of the proposed development, the hatched areas that you see here are the clearing of the vegetation, or the tree line, the proposed tree line that would be pushed back towards the limit of work. The limit of work along the north is essentially located at the down gradient limit of the property, or of the project, the down gradient limit of the project. Let me back up a second. So The perennial stream along the rear of the parcel has a 200-foot riverfront area associated with it. We stayed completely outside of the 200-foot riverfront area. Obviously, portions of the project are within the buffer zone to the BVWs, but I think just wanted to emphasize that there is a 200-foot riverfront area on the site, and the proposed work is located outside of that. So as you can see, a lot of this clearing goes right up to that 200-foot riverfront area, but we took care to stay outside of that 200-foot area. Moving on. So the proposed development is essentially a multifamily condominium development, duplex units. In total, the project will have 18 units, and that does include the existing building that is there today. Essentially, as you can see on the plan, there are two cul-de-sacs that one longer cul-de-sac, more traditional cul-de-sac that projects into the site, and then sort of another cul-de-sac that projects off to the west, as you can see here. So that's essentially the layout of the parcel. We'll move on and we can add the grading to that. So we're looking at the grading and erosion control plan now. And essentially, the grading of the parcel was designed to be relatively, following the existing topography of the land, meaning that, coming from Loudville Road, you grade down gradient to the cul-de-sac here, and then from here towards the cul-de-sac here. Then the stormwater basin is proposed off of the eastern property line here, up in some nice sandy soils that were found on site. So this was the most logical location. This is essentially based on the test pits that were done on the property, as well as the topography. Portions of the work that are within the buffer zone include the clearing of the land associated with the construction of the units along the perimeter. So specifically, going backwards, 18, 17, 16. This dark dashed line represents the 100-foot buffer to the offsite BVW. So you can see that these units clip the 100-foot buffer. These units are within the buffer. And then moving towards the rear, that 100-foot buffer is this dash line, but in more closer proximity is the 200-foot riverfront area, which we stayed outside of. And then obviously the 100-foot buffer kind of comes into the site, projecting off of this wetland projection onto the property, and sort of the down gradient toward slope of this topography here comes around and off to the east here, or west. Gotta get east and west right. So, a number of units are within the 100-foot buffer. A portion of the stormwater basin is within the 100-foot buffer for the wetland that's towards the south of the property. This, as you can see here, this dash line is the 100-foot buffer. The sediment forebay side, and then a portion of the basin are within the buffer. One thing to keep in mind is that this basin was designed to completely contain the 100-year storm event, so that there is no point source discharge. There's no outlet control structure with the flared end section, for instance, that comes out of this basin. So this basin was designed to contain the 100-year storm. In the event that there was a storm event in excess of the 100-year storm, there is the topography was designed such that it would sort of overflow across the rear of these parcels and off towards this isolated wetland, and then off-site to the north. So, but that's an extreme event greater than the 100-year storm. I believe this is the roof drain. Just a sheet depicting what we would anticipate the roof drains, the roof drain network, what it would look like. I guess the main intent for showing this here right now is that, the majority of these units would have their roof drains tied to the stormwater basin. The rear of units 4, 5, 6, and 7, just based on topography, would discharge in making the numbers work, the pre and post development discharge rates work. The rear of these parcels or the rear roofs, so the back halves of these units, the back half of the gable would discharge to an outlet here, to a flared end here, but that flared end is outside any buffer zone and riverfront area. All the others would be either discharged on grade or tied to the proposed basin. And then from there, these are just the plan and profiles of the, I don't know how deep we want to get into the plan and profiles, but these depict, all the utilities, water lines, things like that. But you can see that from Loudville towards the cul-de-sac, the topography drops towards the rear of the parcel. And, we tried to match the existing topography as much as we could. And then the smaller cul-de-sac here from the intersection drops off to a low point, a series of catch basins at the throat of the cul-de-sac, which would collect the runoff from that impervious area and convey it towards the surface basin. This is the landscaping plan. So this would just depict any of the plantings that we have proposed, adjacent to and surrounding the roadways. We can get into the details of those as we discuss, but that's really the gist, and then we get into the details. So I think I'll stop there and open it up to the commission for any questions.
Okay, commissioners, does anyone want to go first? We can take a roll call approach.
It's exciting stuff. I feel like I just talked for 10 minutes.
Anyone? Deborah, August, do you have any questions right now?
Sure. Yeah. How close? You have some of the condos toward the back. What is that? 13, 14, 15, 16. How close are you to the Hannambrook? Oh, okay. 15, 14, 13, and 12. Like, how close is this to the brook?
Yep. So Hannambrook is that's represented by these flags back here, and then this is the 200-foot riverfront area. So I don't have an exact dimension, but we are beyond 200 feet to Hannambrook.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure someone else will ask about that, but my other question was, when you remove these trees, whatever you're doing for removal, how are you removing them? Are you stockpiling them? If you are, where would that be? Does it look like a vast amount of trees?
Yep. So I mean, typically, how you would go onto a property like this and to remove the trees. Here, let me go back to the removals plan. So obviously, step one would be to install the erosion control. Make sure that the erosion control has been installed properly, dug in, the silt fence has been dug in, and then you'd come in and you take the trees, you log the trees minus the stumps to prevent any erosion while the trees are being cut, and then you'd come back and de-stump after that.
So when you take these trees out, you're removing them directly. You're not stockpiling trees or logs or debris.
Not long term. I'm sure that there might be some temporary storage or some stockpiling just while they come down, but no long term storage of the tree trunks on the property.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Harwood?
I guess I'm just wondering about all the development or the impacts in the 100-foot buffer zone, whether I don't know enough about the Wetlands Protection Act about the precedent for that, so it's more of a question for Melissa, I think, or other commissioners, or Cassie.
So basically the there is no express performance standard for buffer zone. It's just buffer zone. It's there to protect the resource areas it's drawn off of. So it's up to the commission to determine if the activities can be conditioned in a way that minimizes impacts to wetland resource areas. And in most buffer zone projects, the focus is on erosion and sedimentation, short-term and long-term.
Melissa, I had a question, and I don't know if this is applicable to this situation, but I know that in other projects where the act speaks to like more impactful projects in terms of, actually not just the buffer zone, you can ask for a wetland wildlife habitat assessment. I don't know, since this doesn't fall under the requirement for a wildlife habitat assessment, could we still ask for one?
We can ask, but there's it's entirely voluntary because there is no regulatory requirement substantiating that request. So if the commission would like to request that a wildlife habitat evaluation be performed for buffer zone, we can, but we don't have the authority to require one. Unless and until we get a bylaw or an ordinance that establishes that. But that wouldn't apply to this project.
Yep. I guess just one thing to point out is that there are big clearings here already. This cul-de-sac is situated in one of the big clearings, and then the basin, where the basin is located in the rear of these units, it's also clear. So, there is, obviously clearing associated with this, basically the middle and the edges. So it's not completely vegetated, I guess is my point, with mature woods.
It's Commissioner Whittemore. Is there a tree map before this? Showing where the vegetation is?
Yes, yep. So this is the demolitions and removals plan. The hatched areas are the areas which are currently, the limits of the hatch are the existing tree line and they extend to the limit of work where the proposed tree line is.
The only thing that really stuck out to me was I think the left side of the property is sloped left, going downhill left to right. So the clearing of trees, the runoff, where's it going to go?
This
Is it gonna
portion,
go-
this area here.
Yeah, going left to right. The first map where you gave the slope gradient of the condominium site plan.
Okay. Yep. Let me. Yep. So this area here, I guess essentially the cul-de-sac and the front yards, let's call it the front yards of these condos are going to drain towards the roadway, and the rear yards, the roof, it would either be for units 4, 5, 6, and 7 will be piped, and the others will be discharged on grade onto little splash pads for the rears of those parcels.
And then the next slide where you touched on it briefly, it showed the gradient or the topography elevation. Yeah.
This one here.
Yeah. So the left. Okay, is that the right side?
Yep. So this is the shorter cul-de-sac, I believe, where you're talking. So it actually grades back towards the intersection.
But then the other map shows it goes down. How many feet is that, or what's the gradient? Goes from 200 to.
Here, let me zoom in on the profile. So the existing is about 198. This is on both sides of the road, but so the center line is 198, goes down to about 197, I would say, right in the middle here, and then back up. This is where the intersection is. So there'll be that's where we're cutting, I believe, at the intersection. So that's representative of this area right in here.
And where's the cutting on this map? No, the other one on the left.
This one here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's this station here. So if I could just pan down, I could show you that following the center line of the, let's call it the main road, the intersection's at about 2+, station 2+, 15-ish. So you can come over here, follow the stationing along the bottom of this profile. So 2+, these are in 50-foot increments. So 2 + 15 will put you somewhere in here. So it lines up with right in the middle, somewhere in this area. So this is this cut that you're seeing in this profile is the same cut that you are seeing, if I can pan over, in this profile here, because that's at the intersection, if you can follow me on that. They're the same spot, just looking at it from two different angles.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
No further questions.
Ryan, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
Yeah, just with the tree removal shows in many locations that it's right up against the silt fence, and right behind that silt fence, things can drop off pretty fast. If you're doing tree removal and stump removal that close to the silt fence, I'd just be concerned a little that it would get damaged pretty easily.
Yeah, understood. Yep. And I think, if the chair proceed this way, that's one of the comments I believe that comes up, or something in that line that comes up in the DEP review, is that temporary sedimentation basins or erosion control basins, and I think that because a lot of this limit of work is at the top, you don't want the silt fence line to be your only line of defense against erosion control, that you'd want to install some sort of collection points here so that runoff just doesn't come screaming across the site and hit the fence. you know, it has a chance to collect in a low spot before it hits the fence.
But you're not proposing using straw wattles anywhere. It's all silt fence?
I believe so, yes. Yep. It's single, just the silt fence. No, not the double barrier with the straw bales. So just the silt fence. But, you know, if those are obviously conditions of, you know, a project of this size is going to be also monitored under the, you know, with the NIPD's SWIP, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Permit, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. So after any major rain events, they're required to walk along and check the erosion control measures and make any repairs as necessary, or increase the measures if what is there is insufficient.
All right.
Commissioner Buttrick, do you have any comments at this time?
I guess I have some questions. Let me see, trying to follow along here. I guess stormwater wise, I was looking through the, has the city engineer been given the stormwater report and things to review? That's something that we do as part of the stormwater permit process.
Yeah, yes. So the planning, so, you know, we're obviously, this is the conservation intent hearing. Planning also has all the same documentation. It's all been distributed through the town. We haven't received any comments from the town engineer or the planning department. So that is something that we would certainly look forward to hearing and addressing.
Okay. What will the future ownership of the stormwater basin and stormwater system be? An association, or will it be the city expected to take it over?
It'll be part of an association, a condo association.
Okay. And so I'm assuming there's an operation and maintenance plan as part of the stormwater report.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
One thing that we have in town in a number of locations are very sandy soils overlying more, I don't know, I guess less permeable soils. And so we get these like dingles, what we call them, which are these sort of rapidly forming gullies that head up hill from the receiving water. And I guess I'm looking at that one sort of BVW that comes up the slope from Hannum Brook in between the two cul-de-sacs. And then I'm looking at the steepness of the slope relative to the stormwater basin, the steepness of that slope to the north. And wondering if increasing load of water infiltrating like right above that point could lead to future slope type issues in that area. I guess I need you to give me your thoughts right now, but that's something I might be interested in hearing about at some point. Just because it's something that it would be sort of a tragedy if that slope started to fail because of increasing the load of infiltrating water at the top of it.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I guess just a quick response to that would be that, these basins are designed per the Stormwater Handbook, Volume 2, Chapter 2, sets specific setback distances and set specific not regulations, but it's the handbook, so it's guidelines for you to design these things for. So if we can demonstrate that we meet all of those requirements, then that's typically what we've done. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. I understand your concern is that sandy soils, off in the sandy soils, it'll leach out quicker there.
Yeah, there's a tendency of
yeah.
There's a tendency for water to infiltrate vertically very quickly through the sand and then hit that confining layer and then travel horizontally towards the receiving water, and then it could saturate the toe of that slope more so than it is now, and so that's where that concern comes from. We had an application in front of us for a Stop and Shop project up by the Tasty Top like 100 years ago, and that was a major concern for that project. Although we never did review the notice of intent, it was sort of just a delineation we were looking at originally. The project kind of died, but there was a large dingle coming right up the slope at the site in that case.
Sure.
And so it's all curb and gutter drainage.
Correct. Yep. Series of low points with catch basins that will deep sump catch basins that will convey water underground through a pipe network towards the basin. For that BVW on the north side, the basin is outside the 100 foot to that one. We are within the 100 foot to the BVW to the south.
Yep. And I think I noticed in the test pit logs that the test pit in the area of the proposed basin showed no groundwater.
Right.
Down to.
Yep. It was 110 inches plus.
Yep.
So we went across the site during the concept phase of the project and just really dug holes everywhere. We were even considering under the cul-de-sacs with some sort of subsurface system, but really the soils in this area just presented very well with being that sandy material, no groundwater, and then digging down other test pits, they did hit that more clay-like material, but that was never hit on this side of the site. So they went down 110 plus inches and never hit that. So that's, all those things were considered when we were locating the basin.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So storm drainage wise, I'm having it looks like there's 3 pipes coming into the basin, 1 or 2 sort of up gradient of the, I don't know what, of the sediment forebay, I guess you could call it sediment forebay, and then a 3rd down gradient of the sediment forebay. Is that 3rd, are the 2 smaller lines, are they foundation drains or roof leaders, or what are those?
Yeah, so the 2 smaller lines are the roof leaders. Those represent the roof leaders coming in. The main pipe here is the roadway drainage, let's call it.
Yep. And how do you meet your 80% TSS removal requirement?
Yep. So the basin itself with proper pretreatment provides 80% TSS removal. So our pre-treatment is within the catch basins themselves and the sediment forebay. So the way you calculate that is that each one of those independently gives 25% TSS removal credit, and combined, those, you're not allowed to sort of double dip. So you can't say you're taking 44% TSS removal and then another 80% for the basin. They're sort of independent calculations. So the pre-treatment is, the catch basins and the sediment forebay, then a properly designed basin with a sediment forebay provides the 80% TSS removal requirement.
Yep. Okay, and almost by definition, I guess, since you're retaining and infiltrating, you said 100-year storm size, right? That then you are doing peak flow control and recharge volume. Correct.
Yep. The recharge volume is within the basin. And it's just a challenge. These basins, just the location, having that steep slope back there, having the riverfront area, like a location to get a discharge or even a point source is just didn't present itself. So that's why we went the route of designing the basin to contain the 100-year storm and the soil conditions on top of it.
Yep. Okay. I think that's all the questions I have for now.
Are there any other commissioner questions before I start asking mine?
Can I ask?
Yes.
So back to what we were saying about that backside to the condos facing toward Hannum Brook, because of the slope and everything, are you removing all the trees, and then are you replanting some kind of a living fence, if you will, like some other trees or plantings as a barrier between and around these backsides of the condos? Or is it just bare condo, open slope, and then the brook?
So we would clear the trees up to the silt fence line, and that's mainly to provide space for the grading, to tie the proposed grading into the existing topography. And now, so what, you'd go in, you take the trees, you'd clear and grub, you take the topsoil off, you do all of your grading, your rough grading, and then your foundation construction. And then once your foundations are in and your silt fence is still up, that's when you go through and topsoil any exposed surfaces and bring it up to your finished grade, and then you vegetate that surface with a grass.
So that's all that you're going to be putting back there is like a seed and X, a grass seed and X. There's no other trees or plantings or barriers.
There are in between and along the portions of the fence of the limit of work, but the majority it would be just revegetated with a grassy surface. Just like a lawn area adjacent to the unit.
So, Melissa, could we ask to see, the grass seed mix, or if there needs to be plantings? Whatever we're open to be able to ask, because there is that, two isolated?
We don't have jurisdiction over isolated wetlands.
I'm sorry. The isolated wetlands. It just looks like there should be something more than just grass. So can they propose and send to us what they're doing for the backside?
We can ask about seed mix, but our jurisdiction, again, is limited to where their work is in buffer zone. and we don't, under the Wetlands Protection Act, we don't have jurisdiction over isolated wetlands, and they don't get a buffer zone. So we're constrained in that regard in those areas.
I'm just concerned because removing all the trees and what Jay had said about the slope and,
No, within buffer zone, absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. So, like for instance, the grading, on the back side of the sidewalk here, we'll get some shrubby vegetation, similar between units 9 and 10. And these are the areas that are within the 100-foot buffer to this BVW that kind of follows up the bottom of slope here. But I understand what you're saying. So maybe some additional woody vegetation at the bottom of slope,
In all native.
within the buffer zone. Yep.
Are there any proposed monuments to prevent, 5 years from now, someone trying to extend their yard further into the 200-foot buffer zone or into any other buffer zone?
Currently, I do not believe that. Well, I don't believe any are shown. I don't believe it's a requirement, but I don't believe any are shown.
Jay, that is certainly something that the commission has required on other projects.
Okay.
Other
We've definitely done it.
I would recommend we discuss further as we get through our review.
Sure. Yeah, we have done that, many times. So that's certainly logical to request.
That actually prompted me to think, commonly we will get requests right after construction is complete to add on decks to the backside of structures that we permit. Do these structures have decks in their design concept? And if not, could they? So that we don't have to do it again.
Because then they call us to, hey, we want decks sometime.
Yeah.
So these areas back here, I believe, are patios that would extend off the back side of the townhomes. But I can see if we can get an architectural elevation or floor plan.
I don't really need anything like that, or I don't anyways. I just want to. I guess I wanted to be clear that we talked about decks or patios, and that we permitted what is going to be wanted, and that we're not going to expand from that after the fact.
Okay. Okay.
Or at least we're not going to want to.
Okay.
Before I get started on mine, are there any other questions from members of the commission? All right. So Philippe, could you give me a scale here? What is the total footprint of disturbance, and how much of that is in the 100-foot buffer zone?
Sure. I'm trying to think of where I can pull that short of opening AutoCAD, because I can pull some polylines on AutoCAD real quick. I can work on that. Let me try to find.
Because consistent with, I think, other concerns that have been expressed both by DEP and members of the commission, is there a phasing plan to construction?
Currently, there's not a phasing plan, not specifically phased out on a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. So I would say no, there's not a phased out plan to this development.
A concern is having a large area of ground disturbance with a row of silt fence or straw wattle and silt fence, if the commission requires, it is all well and good. But if there's a significant erosion event, it's probably not going to be adequate. So if the whole site is opened up, the concern would be having adequate construction period measured in place.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And the way the project lays out is sort of lays out that it can be sort of segmented off in phases. You know, whether you go to the rear cul-de-sac first, obviously you have to build the drainage prior to any of the homes, but you know, maybe, you know, this arm of the cul-de-sac gets put into a second phase or something along those lines. Build the road and then only clear certain portions of the site, or clear and grub, you know, leave the stumps in to prevent that sort of erosion. That makes sense.
That would be, at least from my perspective, that would be preferable.
Yep.
Rather than throwing more erosion and sedimentation controls at it, manage the site in a smarter way.
Yep.
So is there, I'm picturing a lot of cut and fill and excavation for foundations. Do these full basements? How much excavation is expected for these buildings and the utilities that go with them, since everything's underground?
Sure, everything's absolutely. Let me back up off this. This is the landscaping plan. One more. Right here. So I think that these units will have basements, but I'd want to confirm that. I remember there being discussion about whether they're going to have full basements or not, because most of them aren't set up for walkouts. Typically, you know, when you're on a slope like this, you have a walkout. This 8 and 9, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, sort of set up for walkouts, patio area, but they don't necessarily all have that sort of drop off behind them. So I can find out what the plan is for the basements. You're right. I mean, you excavate a double wide townhome, you're going to have to stockpile that soil somewhere.
And by that same token, what is the, you know, what we're seeing here is final proposed grading and building footprint. What is the footprint of that excavation? Are they going to be, you know, based on the depth, how far out does the excavation reach?
Yeah.
And does that encroach upon the limit of work line?
Reach of excavation.
And then while we're talking about excavation, you know, is there a construction period plan that shows where soil stockpiles will be created?
Yep. Soil stockpiles. Yep. We can show those on the, it usually sets up well to show those on the demo and removal plan to show the stockpiles, locations. Again, you know, so development, you'd probably set up rough grading for the road with the subgrade and the subbase, you know, get your base course of asphalt and obviously grading around it. Not necessarily finish grading or, you know, any fill areas sort of like behind these homes here. That would be done probably after the foundation or before, you know, I'll get some more information on that for sure.
Okay. And then a question, and this comes from other areas of town where over time swales that were graded got filled in, most likely because their function wasn't understood. But there are several areas where there are swales to be graded in, or not swales necessarily, but the grading looks like it's intentional to convey stormwater runoff.
Sure.
There to the north of there, other parts of the site that are outside our
Back here.
jurisdiction. But the same concern would apply, and that is what provisions are in place or will be in place to ensure that those areas don't get lost over time. Because once they're lost, then the system doesn't function as originally intended. Is there some sort of provision that can be included?
I mean, I think that's something that should be incorporated into the long-term operation and maintenance plan. You know, having a plan that defines these areas specifically, all the areas, but you know, intentionally for the areas in the buffer zone that show on the plan that this area is a swale, you know, a grass, it's not really a grass channel. But
For lack of a better term, it's
Yeah.
rated specifically to convey runoff, even if it's not a deep swale.
Right. And that, you know, just set it up as part of the long-term operation and maintenance plan that these areas be inspected and that they have been maintained as these swales. Right. I mean, if somebody goes out to Home Depot and buys a bunch of loam or, you know, the local mulch yard down the road and fills one in, he's going to have to pull it out afterwards.
Who is responsible for that ultimately in the long run? Is that the condo? Would that be a condo association?
Right. Yep. So they would be the ones responsible for the maintenance records.
Mm-hmm. And is there an area, I'm assuming since this is all private, is there an area identified for snow disposal? Or, you know?
I don't believe there's one specifically shown on the plans, but, you know, similar to any residential subdivision, you know, plowed down the road, probably just pushed off to the side of the road in most locations, but we can, you know, middle of the cul-de-sac always seems to be where it ends up, you know. Mm-hmm. Some, you know, plow drivers coming down the main drag, he's going to push most of it into the center of the cul-de-sac. And then whatever's around the cul-de-sac just kind of gets pushed off the side of the road.
And there are no drainage features inside those cul-de-sacs that I can see that would essentially be stockpiled upon? No catch basins or things like that. Those are all in the paved roadway.
There's trees proposed in there at this point in the center.
Are there? Which sheet is that on?
C8.
C8. So right at the center of
Okay.
those areas.
Can you pan over to the plant list, please?
To the which one? Sorry.
The table in the top right corner.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just had a barge in.
Quite all right. So, Cassie, at this time, have you gotten any feedback from the engineering department on the stormwater design?
I have not. I reached out to him and sent him, just notified him to make sure that he had received something. And I sent him a copy of the stormwater report that we had received. I didn't receive back any comments or notification that he had received the stormwater report from the applicant themselves as a separate, submission to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I don't have any information from him directly.
Okay.
Yeah, and just, realizing that there's still process to be had here with the planning department and the engineering. Certainly, not, it'd be great if we could, but, I'm not looking to close, just to leave it open to any changes that might occur through that process.
Well, certainly, I know I feel like I have questions that haven't been answered, and I think that I would value input from the engineering department with regard to stormwater, since that is what DEP's comments pertain to.
Yep.
I'm wondering.
Melissa, quick question. For the infiltration basin, is there an overflow or anything? How's that work?
It was explained that the basin was designed for a 100-year storm event.
So no drainage, overflow, spillway, anything?
There's no constructed overflow. Is that correct, Philippe?
That is correct. There's no, there is a way. We have thought about if there was a storm in greater than the 100-year storm, what happens, and it would overflow through the backyards of, the intention would be to overflow through the backyards of 14 and 15, and then ultimately through this isolated wetland area and then off site to the north. But that's when we're talking, storm events greater than, 6.5 inches.
Okay, thank you.
Jessica Harwood, you had a comment?
I was just curious about a site visit, although I don't know. I guess I'm curious just to see that slope because I can see the topography from the maps, but it looks steeper than. I don't know if we'd be able to access it.
I did do a site visit. I can pull up those images now if people would like to see them. And that was done on the 2nd of this month. I don't know if the images will depict that slope necessarily, though. We kind of stayed to the open field, and the images are of that area, and in the path through the woods, the wooded area that's to be removed. I can, if you guys want, I can share that now. Okay, hold on one second.
We saw turkeys.
We did. We saw turkeys. That was exciting. Okay, hold on just a second. All right. So can you see those images now?
Yep.
Okay. So this area that you're seeing now is just kind of a general, in the center of the screen is the approximate location where the westernmost cul-de-sac is supposed to be located. You can see it's in the an open field area. The trees in the back there behind this barn, I believe, are a portion of them are to be removed. And let's see.
That barn is scheduled to be demolished.
Yes. Yep.
And let me just go through. So this is kind of more of an overview of that whole area. You can see the barn again. There's some existing trees in that field. The house, the existing house, is just to the left out of frame here. Then this is an image looking back. at that area. So there's the existing house. This is where we entered from. This is the field, and so the barn is behind us in this image. Then the path is over to the left here that would lead to the eastern section of the property. So here's us entering that kind of wooded area that has an existing path. This is inside the wooded area. So you can see it's not a huge existing path, and then there's vegetation on either side that is scheduled to be removed. And this is the basin area that they described it, where it would be kind of sandy. So it'd be like this inner section over here, as I understood it. So kind of this is how far away it is from the wooded area. But again, Jessica, I apologize. I know that probably doesn't show you what you were asking in terms of the gradient. Oh, and sorry, I didn't share this one. This one's the entrance from the road. So the existing house is to the left there. And this is kind of, it looks like where the proposed road essentially would be from Loudville Road itself.
Yeah, just for reference, the edge of pavement would essentially be right up that tree line there. It would have to take it back for some the grading of the roadway, but essentially that tree line is the edge of the pavement on the right side, and then the road would go to the left. Essentially where the driveway is. See where the driveway is? In that direction.
Cassie, are there any other photos at this time?
No, I don't have any other photos.
Okay. Right. Are there any other questions or comments from the commission at this time? Right. At this time, I would like to open this up to public comment. Again, we request that you utilize the raise hand function, and the agent will make note and call on individuals in order in which the hands are raised. The Commission's purview is limited to the Wetlands Protection Act, which constrains us to bordering vegetated wetland in the 100-foot buffer zone on this site, and activities proposed therein, as well as stormwater management. So with that, I also request that you identify yourself prior to speaking. Thank you.
So there's a number of people here who may have comments. One thing that I'm realizing, instead of using the hand raise function, it might be easier just to go down the list, and I will unmute people individually and give them their chance to make comments, if that's okay with the commissioners.
Yes, as long as I can. Cassie, can you easily see who is present?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to defer to your view on things. And I just ask also that comments be addressed to the chair.
Okay, so the first person list that I have is Garrett Stover from Toscana Conservation Trust. I'm going to unmute you now. Let's see here. Or you can unmute yourself if you have any comments you'd like to make. I also received a written comment from Toscana Conservation Trust. I don't know if this is the appropriate time. I could read it. Yeah, I can read it now. If everyone can hold on for a second, I will pull that up. Okay. So the comment, as I said, this is shared by or is submitted by the Pescomic Conservation Trust, and it reads as follows. Dear Mrs. Cody and Commissioners, with apologies for this late submission, as an abutter, Pescomic Conservation Trust would like to express the following concerns regarding this development as currently proposed. Since 1996, our organization has owned the long but narrow tract running along the north bank of Hannam Brook, almost the entire distance between West Street and Clark Lane. The trust has a short trail leading from Carillon Circle down to the brook, directly across from the subject property. The overall scale and appropriateness of the project may not be the Conservation Commission's primary regulatory focus. However, we do believe that its location across from conservation land and above an intact floodplain with a brook, which has long been fished and indeed has been stocked by DFWELE, requires careful scrutiny of potential development impacts and extra caution in review and application of standards. In particular, during the past 20 plus years, we have had the opportunity to remark the considerable fragility of the slopes above Hannam Brook. Whether or not apparent from soil maps or a brief site inspection, the combination of highly erodible silts with the frequently clayed substrate produces unpredictable subsurface flows. This likely will be increasingly the case given recent more intense rain events. Even with the usual measures in place to control runoff from normal rainfall, the extensive clearing and hardening of the landscape proposed under the project could result in adverse impacts to the stream. Finally, while it is true that the brook and its environs have not been identified as a habitat resource of statewide importance, the loss of a substantial portion of the undeveloped land at this widest point along the otherwise narrow brook corridor is an unfortunate prospect which will inevitably degrade what is still a peaceful refuge for wildlife and people next to a heavily developed neighborhood. We ask only that the Commission carefully consider the project and within the regulatory capacity, minimize any degradation of Hannam Brook and our conservation area. Sincerely, Garrett Stover, Volunteer Land Conservation Advisor for Pescomic Conservation Trust. And that ends the comment. I don't know if the applicant has anything they'd like to say in response, or the commissioners.
Not at the moment.
Is someone speaking? I couldn't quite hear.
Hold on one second.
Cassie, could you distribute that letter electronically to the commission following this meeting?
We got it.
Yeah, I did send that.
I'm
I sent
sorry, I missed that one.
electronically.
I apologize, I missed that.
And could I get a copy of that letter as well?
Yes, I will send that to you soon.
Mhm.
Okay, let's see here. All right, the next person that I have is a woman named Judy. You may unmute yourself, or I can unmute you now if you have any comments that you'd like to share with the commission.
Hi, at this time, I am going to pass. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to mute you again. The next participant that I have is someone named Peggy Graham. I'm going to unmute you now if you have any comments you'd like to share with the commission. Okay. All right, I'm going to take that as no comments. All right, the next person is, apologies, Tricia Squire. So that might be another person. If you have any comments related to this, you can unmute yourself now. Okay, and finally, I have a gentleman on the phone here who, sir, if you can introduce yourself. I'm going to hold you up to the speaker now, and you can make your comments if you're prepared. Are you ready? I am. Okay, hold on just a second. Okay, you can go ahead now. And please state your name for the record.
Yep, Alan Robert Towsick, Senior. I live on 63 Lovely Road. Their property, that fields. I'm looking at the map right now. I know where Frank, his father, was and everything. I see where the road comes through. And it abuts my property, and I have wetlands. And it looks like there's two buildings that are way too close. You're supposed to be 100 feet away. I'm almost positive you're supposed to be 100 feet away from wetlands. So I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and yeah, you guys are really close to my property pin, and I'm almost positive you have to be 100 feet away. Yeah, I'm standing up right now looking at the TV screen, and yeah, that's my property. You're on my property right now, so go to that corner to the left, and that's all wetlands, and those houses look a lot closer than 100 feet. That feels that. Yep, that's my corner right there. Boom, chicka-licka. Yep, that's all wet. So I'm just not quite sure what you're going to do about that, because I will make sure I'll be out there with a tape measure every day. Yeah. I mean, I know it's your property and everything. That's cool. Hammer down, but don't get too close to me, please.
If I may, the commission is authorized to review activities within 100 feet of wetlands. And they certainly do have the buffer zone shown there. Thank you.
Yeah, trust me, a lot of snow and stuff like that, but
I think, sir, I apologize for interrupting you. Just for your first point, the chair had a response, but I think that it was missed because of cross-talking. If it's all right, can you just let her restate the response to the first portion of your comment, and then that second portion, we can do that after? Is that all right?
that's fine with me. Yeah, we've been, yeah, you guys have been breaking up.
Okay. She's gonna.
Let her rip.
Okay.
So to the first comment that there is work shown within 100 feet of the wetland that is near your property line or on your property, that is accurate. The commission reviews activities within 100 feet of wetlands. It's not strictly prohibited, and that is
within 100 feet of my within wetlands. Yep.
yes, and that is part of what we are reviewing with this application.
I'm looking at it right now on the TV and everything, and yeah, you got two houses right in my back, well, his backyard, but my backyard too. Like I said, I live in that little corner. I'm on 63 Lovely Road. So where are you with the little doohickey? You just come down to that corner, and that's pretty close to. That's really close. Yeah, keep going. I'll go to the left a little bit. Yeah, go no left. Sorry, I'm looking at the TV. Go left. I'm right in the corner. You keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. That's my corner right there. Coming up, keep going. Right there. Oh, that's it.
Right here.
I'm right here in 63 Lovely Road. Go to your right. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then straight up now. That's my corner. No, not straight across.
There should be a sheet that shows all the property, the abutters. I think there's a sheet that shows who's who.
That's where you are right now is not my property. I'm on the next lot over to your left.
Yep. Hold on.
I'm on the next lot over to the left. 63 Lovely Road, Alan Towsick. Yep. Yep. But it looks really close. Just make sure you're not 100 feet away from the wetlands. That's all I'm saying. That's all. Yeah, and we do have a lot of wildlife and everything, and we do. I mean, I got spotted salamanders. I could shut the whole project right down if I really wanted to.
Sir,
I'm not going to, but I'm just saying that's all.
And if I could potentially just provide some clarification for jurisdictional areas for the wetlands, for the Conservation Commission. The wetlands are the black flagging triangles there. And then 100 feet extending from that is what's considered to be the buffer zone. And that has,
Stop right there. Oh, you just missed my corner. Right, stop right there. Yeah, right there. That's my corner of my property. Right, it'll come down, straight down, straight down, straight down. Slide it right down. Okay, yep. That's my corner. That's my property right there, and that's all wetlands. And you gotta be within 100 feet of that. And that building over here to the right, one to the left, one to the right, looks way too close. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not 100 feet because that field's not even that big. Yeah, I'm just saying. That's all. It is wet. You know, I got frogs, I got tree frogs, I got all kinds of stuff. Yeah, but I just want to make sure he's, staying 100 feet away from wetlands. That's all. That's my biggest complaint right there. And thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you for your comment.
But like I said, I've been here for 94. I knew Frank Stibler. He was a nice man. He was a good man. Yeah. Yeah, I really don't know his wife at all, but yeah, I knew Frank though. Yeah.
do you have any other questions or comments that you'd like to make for the commission?
Yeah, no, other than that, just water. But I heard all you guys talk about the water and everything. No, I'm okay with that. Yeah, just make sure you stay 100 feet away from that wetlands. And I guess I don't know what to say. It's his property, not mine. Yeah. But thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, you guys have a good night.
Okay, I had another, I don't know if, Philippe, you want to speak to that at all? I have another comment on deck.
I think we should move.
Yes, we can move on.
Okay, the next comment was from Judy, who earlier spoke. She did have a question. It reads, they drilled down 100 inches and had no water, and our cellars fell out of time. Judy, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and make your comment now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm new to this.
I'm just wondering, I'm David, I'm Judy's husband. I'm just wondering, there's a lot of clay under here. It's sand on the top, but a lot of clay underneath. I get water in my cellar all the time. How can they go down 100 inches and not find water? In that pit area they were talking about, they said they drilled down 100 inches and didn't find any water?
Yep.
Are you drilling in a selective space so you won't find water?
Philippe, could you go to a figure that shows all the test pit locations that were explored?
Sure.
And then maybe speak to the boring logs or the test pit logs?
Yep.
Thank you.
Just trying to find what shows them the best. Here we go. So this is the existing conditions plan. Just making sure I'm not muted. This is the existing conditions plan. And each one of these squares represents a location where we dug a test pit. And what that means is we were on site with an excavator and we went down basically as far as the size of the machine would let us go. So we're not drilling a boring that's only, say, 6 inches in diameter. We're excavating a test pit that's probably 2 to 3 feet wide, 10 feet deep about. What we did during our evaluation process of the site is we dug a bunch of test pits and we selected the location that had the best soil conditions for the stormwater basin. Areas on the site were not favorable to it. I believe these test pits up through the middle of the site have that clay layer that you speak of. As you progress towards the east, those test pits that clay layer just, seemed like it was getting deeper and deeper until we finally reached the location where we were down 110 plus inches and we had not encountered it yet. So that was clearly the best location for the stormwater basin, which is why it was selected.
Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe.
Has this property already been sold?
I will defer to Philippe, but that's not really subject to the commission's purview. It's currently listed under ownership of Cynthia Steffler.
Correct, in the applicant. Yep.
All right, I was just curious because with some of the borders, it seems to cross part of our driveway. Just curious. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions or comments from the public, Cassie?
That's all that I've received thus far.
Right. Given the discussion that we've had and the information that is been requested, as well as the desire to get comments from the city's engineering department on the stormwater report, would anyone care to make a motion to continue this to July 27th at 6 p.m.?
I'll make a motion to continue to July 27th at 6 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor, Commissioner Buttrick,
Aye.
Commissioner August,
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Philippe, and everyone who participated. All right, let me get back to an agenda here. All right, we have no other hearings or meetings this evening. We will move on to item 4 on our agenda, enforcement actions.
Enforcement actions.
If we ask if you are not participating in this part of the conversation to please mute your microphone. First item, CFN Properties LLC, complete automotive repair, 10 O'Neill Street, map 114, lot 31. Cassie?
Yep, I sent them a letter asking for them to, reach out to us and update about, where they're at. Last we had heard from them, they were working with a contractor to develop a plan to kind of remediate the violations that had occurred there. I haven't received a response to that letter yet at this point. It was in the letter, I believe, that if we didn't receive a response, by this meeting, that we may pursue enforcement. And I didn't know if we wanted to issue an official enforcement order, rather. That is, up to the decision of the commission, of course. Let me just...
Have you had any contact or response beyond a letter?
No.
Do we know if the area is still being utilized as overflow, or if the vegetation is being allowed to restore?
I haven't seen any cars parked on it since we had the original problem.
Yeah, otherwise I haven't received any information from them, or I haven't gone out to the site since then.
Are there any other comments from commission members?
I guess if we could verify, oh, am I muted? No, I'm not muted. I guess if we could verify that they are not using those areas that we were concerned with, that maybe we should, maybe we could drop this as an item and then keep our eyes on it, basically. Or, I don't know. Because if it seems unclear that there's still an enforcement issue to be addressed, you know. Assuming that they have stopped using that area.
And the question is the area restoring, or, you know, through succession and natural revegetation, or has it been so altered that it's essentially just converted to kind of a weedy lawn area?
Oh yeah, that's true. I guess I forgot about the clearing.
I still think they're mowing the area. I'm not sure they're clearing anymore, but they are mowing the grass in the area.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think we need to proceed with an enforcement order then, because that was not within the limits of work that they had approved when they had an order of conditions to build the property. And it's been clear that a restoration plan was expected by the commission. So,
Well, I can go out there and take some pictures and take a look at it before our next meeting.
why don't we do that?
Yeah, I withdraw what I said. I've forgotten about the additional cleared area.
I sent the update letter to the same addresses that I had sent the first letter that I did get a response to, though I did not directly call there's a business there at 10 O'Neill. I can try to do that if you think that's appropriate.
No, I think it's appropriate to reach out to the most current property owner information on record with the assessor's office. So maybe just reach out to the assessor's office to verify the property owner mailing address.
Right. That's what I had
Okay.
when this matter first arose. That's what I did. And so that information is most likely still accurate. That's who I originally sent it to. So that should be good.
Okay. All right. Well, to verify the information, wait for Jay's updated site photos. Thank you, Jay. And we'll decide what to do at our next meeting. So we'll leave that on the agenda.
Okay.
Moving on, next item, Cernak, Westview Terrace, map 165, lot 47.
No updates.
Kaufman, 298 Ladville Road, map 120, lot 11, which we would also touch upon.
I'm just waiting for a pre-construction notification and the pre-construction items.
Okay, we, just a side note, we need to add that under compliance updates as well, since that is an open order of conditions.
Right.
Okay. All right, St. Bridget Cemetery, Our Lady of the Valley Parish, Everett Street, map 145, lot 37.
I actually got a message from Tony Summers, the report that I referenced last week for their monitoring for the restoration work. I can share my screen now if you're all ready to see that.
Thank you.
Hold on a second. Okay, so as you can see, looks like they removed debris, site grading, erosion control installation in October, basic plant treatment in October, and then again in June. They located some within the restoration area. They were treated. And then they restoration, pollution, and erosion control mulch installed June, July 2020. This work is complete except for 4 plants which are on back order from the plant nursery. Substitutions may be required for this upland buffer restoration area. So here are the images. So looks like that was the cleanup. This is the plantings of the restoration area. Invasives along the edge. Last treatment, June 2020.
Cassie, I think we should plan on some small contingent from the commission, whether it's one person or whatever, conducting a follow-up site visit once we receive notice that the restoration plantings have been completed.
Okay. I can do that.
Thank you. All right. Next item, Autumn Properties LLC, rear 161 to 165 Northampton Street,
No updates.
and Bernard Gall, 37 South Street.
No updates.
All right. Open space, Echo Dale West Orchard area improvements.
Okay, so I went back and reviewed, what we had discussed last time, and basically where we left it off in our last conversation, this was before we started doing virtual meetings. The last thing that the Land Stewardship Inc. was able to tell me that the commission was asked was to do to pursue tree removal, and they wanted to get 3 quotes that had prevailing wage included in the quote itself for contractors to do that tree clearing. And it's not clear whether those quotes were ever received or we ever pursued those quotes. I didn't know if maybe someone had a note about, I guess at this stage we would have to redo them anyways. So what steps either I should take or we would need to take to get those to try to move forward with the tree clearing that was discussed.
Jessica Harwood, do you recall?
I remember talking about needing to put it out to bid. And I think there was a personnel changeover I don't remember ever hearing the results of that. That's my memory. I don't know if that helps.
No, that's helpful.
Cassie, this might be helpful to talk to the city planner.
Okay.
And see if he has any guidance he can share with you.
Okay, that sounds good. And then I know it's not in the document that I sent you, but I also had in my notes that Jay, you were saying potentially that you had been partnering with the abutter in regards to the tree removal and had kind of been working with them. I don't know if that is ringing a bell for you.
We had talked to him about doing some brush hog mowing to get access to the trees. That he volunteered at the time to get involved in that, but then we never pursued it with him. But I'm sure he would still do it if the goal was to get rid of some of those diseased trees that are next to his property.
I see. Okay. That sounds like that would be a later stage. The first thing it sounds like is just trying to find a contractor for the tree removal plan. So I'll talk to Jeff about that.
Thank you. All right. Lathrop Community of Easthampton, Florence Road, conservation land discussion.
No updates.
All right. Compliance updates, active projects, open permits. Are we ready?
Yes, and I have a request.
Yes.
We have Jeff Squire here from River Valley, who has proposed changes to take that item out of order for him.
So we will take item 6J out of order to accommodate someone who's actually here.
Thank you, everyone. So River Valley is plugging along with construction, and just a real quick update and request with regards to the stormwater system. If I can share my screen, I can.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me give you that power. Hold on.
That's fine. And so what this request has to do with is there were three trenches sort of highlighted here in yellow in the center of the parking lot. These are in locations where the solar canopies were designed to or intended to cover the parking lot. And the challenge that has come up with construction is a question of sequencing. And there's 2 different contractors. There's a general site contractor that is doing the majority of the work. The solar piece of this project is being is under a different contract with their own site folks, and so the challenge that we were presented with is the site contractor for the market would like to install these drainage trenches and get all this infrastructure in, but the solar company and all those agreements haven't been finalized yet, which means that the pier foundations, which were intended to be centered on these trenches, can't happen in a timely fashion, so it complicates the construction process. So what we're asking for is, originally these trenches, let's pull this up. So the original design is on the left-hand side here. There was a stone-filled trench with a perforated pipe running down the center of it. The piers interrupted the liner in certain locations, and the drainage continued off to essentially a manifold and off toward the wetlands like it was originally designed. The proposal is to simply take those storage trenches, those volumes, out of the trenches and put them underneath the parking lot. And so what we still have a stone-filled trench that will deal with the runoff from the solar canopies and parking lot. It doesn't change the water quality, and nor does it change the volume of water that the stormwater report requires that we hold. We're simply taking these trenches, moving them out of the center of the trench to allow them to build that infrastructure and then go back later and install the solar pier foundations without interrupting the drain pipe. There's still drains to handle overflows in the event of heavy storms, but none of the infrastructure to the left, I'll say, of this page, but toward the wetlands has changed at all. It's really just a change to these three trenches as part of the stormwater permit that we're seeking a change to. But everything else, all the calculations have remained the same. There was a table that we provided that's up now that shows the difference between the two. So the yellow highlights what the volumes and flow rates were for the structures that were approved, or for the pipes that were approved. The blue is the revised calculations. We're over ever so slightly in a couple of the situations in the 100-year storm, but only by 1/10 of the CFS.
Yeah, I'm not seeing this table you're talking about. Is there another screen that you need to share?
I'm sorry. Yes, I probably need to change. Let's see.
Thank you.
Let's see. How do I switch screens here?
And Jeff, if you can't figure it out, I have it also, so I can share.
Okay. Is that any better now?
No, sorry.
All right, let's
Just
try
have to
this.
stop sharing and start again. Yeah.
There we go. How's that?
Perfect.
Much better.
Okay. So this is the table that shows the differences between the previously approved design and the proposed. Yellow was what was approved. The blue are the changes. As I said, this 100-year storm event for one of the drain manholes is 1/10 of a CFS over. All the others are below or under what was previously approved. So it's not going to have any significant impact on the stormwater system. It's just a change that we wanted to make you aware of.
Are there any questions from commission members?
I'm kind of having a hard time following. I'm sorry to ask you to explain it all over again, but
sure.
I didn't quite. I heard the words. I didn't quite translate them into images in my head.
Sure. So there's let me actually. I think the better plan. Is this one. So the original design included these 3 stone-filled trenches in the upper portion of the parking lot. In those trenches, it was filled with stone. It was lined with a liner and included a perforated HDPE pipe at the base of at the bottom of that trench. The issue is that the piers that are intended to support the solar canopy are intended to be driven right in the middle of these trenches. And what they want to do is install these pipes and this infrastructure now, but that means that they would have to go back later with a 3 or 4 foot diameter auger and burrow right through the middle of all this stuff, you know, when all the agreements with the solar canopy and the solar folks are finalized. So what we've proposed is to take that pipe network and pull it out just beyond the edge of these trenches, like what's shown here, so that's under the parking lot. It's still lined, it still has a perforated pipe, but it's underneath the pavement as opposed to under the stone trench. The trench itself would still remain stone with, you know, overflow basins that would tie to that larger, you know, the larger system. So it still functions, you know, almost identically. It's just pulled out and under the parking lot rather than incorporated into that center trench, if that makes sense.
I get it. Yes, I see.
Yeah, so these had a drain line that went right through the middle of them and continued to this header on the west side of the site. Mm-hmm. And so this header still remains in the proposed condition. We're just simply taking that pipe and those storage areas and moving them to below the parking area so that it frees up these trenches for them to do their solar pier installation.
I mean, if anything, is that just a potential future maintenance issue that's not, not the commission's, you know, more the property owner's problem than a jurisdictional issue?
Yeah, I mean, the original maintenance plan called for removal of sediment that's collected in some of these stone trenches. It called for cleaning of these drain inlets, and there's also cleanouts at the end that were intended to provide, you know, access to these should they need to be spray jetted or anything to remove any sediment that's collected. We've still got all of those features as part of this. These catch basins have been improved from just a drain inlet to a full-blown catch basin. So we actually have some locations in those to help trap some sediment. But the operations and maintenance plan remains almost identical in that they will need to periodically remove sediment from these stone trenches, inspect these catch basins, and again, they've got these drainage cleanouts if they need access to jet some of those lines. So it shouldn't change their maintenance plan at all.
Okay. Mr. Buttrick, do you have any further comments? Since you just muted yourself, I'll say no.
I'm just flipping my screen back and forth and pushing fat fingering buttons and that sort of thing. Could you just show the cross-sectional detail again real quick?
Sure.
So existing and proposed. Yeah, there's existing.
So this is the existing one.
Yep.
And the proposed is this is the trench that's underneath the parking lot, obviously with 12 inches above it. And then these are the trenches where the catch basins and stone would be.
So in the proposed condition, the water the stone layer in the trench is shallower than in existing. And so then that shallower trench fills up and then overflows into the catch basin, and then the catch basin sump fills up and overflows over sideways into the perforated drain, and then the water sort of flows through a combination of that pipe and that stone around the pipe in order to get over to the manifold over to the south or wherever that is.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Yep. Yeah, okay. I mean, it doesn't seem like a big deal to me, I would say.
Yep.
Seems like it should work okay.
Yep.
No further comments from me.
Any other commission members? So being none, I think perhaps it would just be beneficial to make a motion to approve this as a minor modification that does not require a formal permit amendment. Would anyone care to make such a motion?
A motion as discussed.
There's a second.
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Commissioner Whittemore.
Aye.
Commissioner August.
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan.
Aye.
Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
So moved. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's see if we can go back up, resume agenda order at item 6A and be efficient. All right, Pleasant Street Mills, Mass DEP file number 151273.
No updates.
Lathrop Community of Easthampton, 100 Bassett Brook Drive, DEP file number 151283, invasive plant management.
No updates.
Melissa Northampton School off Taft Avenue, Mass DEP file number 151286, cross-country running trails.
No updates.
City of Easthampton, Ashwaubenon Pond, 151288, aquatic veg management.
No updates.
Loven Properties off O'Neill Street, 151287.
Actually, hold up on the Nashwanik Pond. It seems like it's about time, you know? Have we heard anything from Gary or anybody?
Gary,
I haven't.
I'll know back.
Say again, Melissa?
I was going to say Gary Golis or Paul Novak.
Yeah. I mean, now it seems like it's about the time of year where we've been hearing from them.
That's usually contingent upon funding.
Yep. Yeah, but usually they'd say, well, you know.
Yeah.
They love their pond. They love our pond.
Cassie, could you reach out to Gary Golis? He's been the primary point of contact for that project.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so back to Loven Properties, O'Neill Street.
Yep, just been submitting reports as per usual. I feel like I had a note about that. If you can just hold on a second. But possibly I don't. Oh, no, yeah. So I got another inspection report on the 1st of July. And this one said, all right. So he made it, so the report was prompted by the rain event on July 1st. And he said, overall, the site remains in the same condition as previous reports. Vegetation between the erosion control barriers and construction area, it says is vegetated, but I think it means that has become vegetated there, and is working as an additional vegetated buffer to filter stormwater runoff from the site. Silt fence, fiber log, and straw bale barriers are still in place. No signs of any erosion. No signs of any silt or soils within the wetlands from the construction activity. So the main thing was just that the area is becoming vegetated. I didn't know if that was like a worthy update to share.
No, it's good.
Okay, cool.
All right. City of Easthampton, White Brook, Broad Brook, 151268, maintenance dredging.
No updates.
One Industrial Lofts LLC, 1 Ferry Street, tracks 1 and 2, DEP file numbers 151298 and 299.
I've been receiving reports regularly, no major events to report.
Okay, Easthampton Park Solar 1 LLC, 232 Park Street, 151293.
Okay, so if you remember, they have the proposed changes to the wetland replication area. At the last meeting, we determined that it was appropriate for them to submit an application for an amended order of conditions.
Yeah.
I have not yet received that submission, and I got an update from Mr. Herzog of Wood PLC that they're still working on it. They did ask for a site visit to occur on Friday, the 17th, tentatively at 3 p.m. I haven't gotten a confirmation of that time yet, but that date, it seems, should be fine. I'll send an update out to all of you as that date gets closer, once I get confirmation of that happening.
Sounds good.
Okay, and then the other matter, let's see. I've also received a request from the environmental monitor to suspend inspections due to reduction in activity. So I'm going to read just what he said to me in the request. So this is from Devin Howe, who's the project environmental monitor. He said, due to the limited activities on site with no ground disturbance, I would like to request that the weekly environmental monitoring inspections, in accordance with condition 33 in the order of conditions, temporarily cease at this time. As I'm sure you are aware, the wetlands replication areas have not yet undergone construction and are pending review from the city. Once the wetland replication areas go under construction, we would then resume the weekly environmental monitoring inspections until work on the replication areas are complete. Once this construction is complete, I would once again, at that time, ask that the environmental monitoring inspections cease. So I don't know, I think that's dependent on the site being stable, not necessarily.
It is dependent upon the site being stable, not whether or not they're required to stabilize the site if they're inactive for what, 14 days, Dan? Or 30, something, their obligation under
14 days. Yes.
Thank you. So, their obligation is to stabilize the site if they're not actively constructing or doing any ground disturbing work, even if it's a temporary measure. Otherwise, they have to keep up their inspections until the site is stabilized or they resume construction, and they have to keep up that schedule anyway.
We can see what it looks like on the 17th if that's a site visit.
Okay, so that would be probably in my response to him. Then I'll ask for maybe some kind of a report that would prove that everything is stabilized, and then that'll be part of this inspection on the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll bring them all in the loop on that. And I was trying to think, it's just particularly for, the proof. Is there anything that you'd like to see particularly in that as proof that it's stabilized, or just kind of?
I think photo documentation of the stabilized site.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Excellent. Well, we got our update on item J, River Valley Co-op. Next item, City of Easthampton, file number 151302, pump house demo at Lower Mill Pond.
Hold on. No updates.
City of Easthampton, 151303, roadway improvements and maintenance of Ferry Street and Pleasant and Lovefield Streets intersection.
I've been receiving reports, no major things to make note of at this point.
Okay. Beacon Solar LLC, Mass DEP file number 151304, large-scale solar project at 50 Florence Road.
No updates.
Easthampton School Committee 151305, construction of new school building, 200 Park Street.
I've been receiving reports. They did experience a breach, and it was fixed.
Okay. What did it affect?
Let's see. Let me pull up the report for you. So it went into the woods, I believe at the rear of the property where they already established a berm. And I'm actually going to share my screen now because there are images. Hold on.
Does that mean their berm failed?
Let's see. One of them, there were two berms and one of them did fail. So let's see. Here's the beginning of the report. Breach number 2, which may not have been no, I don't believe it was a berm there. He just labels it breach number 2, and then it went into the woods. So I think this is the failure right here.
So where is that relative to a wetland boundary? Is this a location where the wetland came right up to the edge of the woods, or is it in the trees a bit? And did this result in a sedimentation of a bordering vegetated wetland?
I mean, from these images, it looks to be in the trees, but I'll have to get clarification.
Yes. If you could have them identify where that is on the site plan as well,
Okay.
that would be helpful.
All right, I can do that. Okay.
Okay. All right. All right. City of Easthampton, 151306, maintenance activities including gravel millings, blah, et cetera, on River Street. Any?
Yep. No updates.
Okay. And then the Kaufman order of conditions for 298 Ladville Road, 298 and 300.
Yeah, I will definitely add that to the next agenda. And the only update that I have is that they haven't started any of the pre-construction elements. I haven't received any notification of that. I was included on a communication with DEP where they requested an update from DEP on whether or not they had intention of appealing. And DEP responded that they do not intend to appeal. So that is just good to have on the record for them and I guess for us.
Okay. Have they been able to record their permit?
That I have not yet received confirmation for. That would probably be included before I signed off on them starting. Something I would look for.
Can you reach out to Mark Stinson at DEP and find out what DEP has been seeing? Because registries are still closed, physically closed to the public, though you can record things by mail. But I've also, thankfully not directly, but close enough, heard of things not going smoothly.
Okay.
So just see what we can do to work with the situation.
Right. No, I've heard of that as well for other communities. As far as I know, our registry of deed, I believe people have still been able to access them. Just an example, the updated or the extended amended order of conditions, they had to submit that for the 100 Bassett Brook Drive at Lathrop Communities, and they were saying that they were able to work with them. So hopefully it should be okay, but I'll double check.
Okay. All right. So that's it for updates. General business. Meeting minutes, March 9th, 2020 and June 22nd, 2020. Take March 9th first. Is there any discussion?
Which one of these did I miss? Or
Neither.
both? Oh, neither. How about that?
I think neither, actually.
Yeah, the reason that this one, I don't know if this is just interesting to people, the reason that this item or these minutes from March, I know that's really a long time ago, they were supposed to be voted on the March 23rd meeting. And that is right when we had to switch to virtual meeting. I mean, the March 23rd meeting only ended up being a 5-minute meeting that we continued all items at. So, and then it kind of got lost in the fray, unfortunately, which is my fault. But at that, I don't know, I didn't receive any comments at that time about edits beyond the general edits that I usually get for it.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from March 9th.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood.
Aye.
Commissioner August. Please unmute yourself, Commissioner August.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan.
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore.
Aye.
Motion carries. Minutes of June 22nd, 2020. Any discussion?
Motion to approve the June 22nd, 2020 minutes.
Second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Buttrick,
Aye.
Commissioner August,
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore,
I'm not sure. I was very late to that meeting, so I'm not sure if I have to abstain or not.
why don't you abstain just to be conservative?
I abstain.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
did I miss anyone?
Me.
Commissioner Harwood, thank you. Motion carries.
Because you were absent without notice. Just kidding.
That was
Oh, boy.
Okay, moving on. Mutterfield updates. Cassie.
Okay. So unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff with this recent NOI, and I didn't actually get a chance to reach out to them yet, but I do plan to do that as soon as possible. I think is where we left it.
Jarrett Stover on the call. Jarrett, is this anything? Would you like to maybe set up a time to talk with Cassie? Or does it only look like we have Garrett Stover on the call?
Oh, let's see. He just sent me in the chat privately, noting that Marty Klein is the appropriate contact for that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so moving on. MACC membership renewal.
Yep. So I received a letter from MACC saying that it's time to renew memberships for everybody if they are interested in doing so. Let's see. I'm not sure what the process for doing that is, other than that you guys just saying that yes, you would like to do that, and then me going forward with processing that bill for the commission's funds.
Can you just verify? I haven't seen a commission budget in a while. Can you verify that expense is covered in the current budget?
Okay.
Before we confirm?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Right, next item, level 2 drought declared.
Yep, so this is just kind of an update for everyone. And we haven't received necessarily any applications that this would be or would affect. But let me just pull it up here. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. I have a document about it if anyone has any questions. And this just it just affects how we review delineations and things because the flow is so low that we have to keep this in consideration, or that they can't even be considered.
Data collected to, under the riverfront area regulations to determine perennial versus intermittent isn't valid for determining that something's intermittent during a drought. But that drought has to be declared by the state.
And I'll let you all know when that declaration is lifted.
Great. Thank you. All right, COVID-19 safety precautions update.
Right, so there's 2 items. Just as an update for all of you to know, the mayor puts out a situational awareness report pretty consistently, and in that report, it was stated that the city offices would not be opening until September. And so, if the city offices are closed, we will not be having a physical in-person meetings until that's open at the very least. And then that we may, even after the city offices are open, we may still not be meeting physically. I don't know if there'll still be requirements that it just has to be under 10 people, and we're already at 8 if we have everyone attending. So most likely, I would expect the virtual meetings to continue for some time beyond September, or at least until September. And then there was another point about that I wanted to make, if I can find it.
Can I have the meeting at my house next time?
If you're willing to have all the abutters share the space.
Apparently, some commissions not in Easthampton are meeting outside.
Oh, really? Well, that would be interesting. I know that we will that the city starting, I want to say July 16th or 17th, is allowing people to make appointments with people who work at the city office, and then we're meeting with them outside for those appointments. Though again, with number gatherings, I'm not sure if that would be an issue. And then this is the other update. There was an order released from the state, order number 42, titled Resuming State Permitting Deadlines. And basically that means that the government has restored our permitting deadlines to review submitted applications. Before, everything was kind of told, and we didn't necessarily have to, review any permits received under any kind of timeline beyond when the state emergency was lifted. Now that's changed and goes back to what it used to be, which I believe is 28 days that we have to review. Or what was it? 21 days. 21. So yeah, that's just an update. We've been seeing all of our items within that window anyways, so hopefully it shouldn't be any major change for us.
Excellent. And you hadn't noticed DEP taking longer to issue file numbers?
No, I haven't. Nope, I've been at good response rate from there.
Okay, great. Well, that concludes our agenda. Does anyone care to make a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor, Commissioner Buttrick,
Aye.
Commissioner August,
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood.
Aye.
So moved.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you, Cassie. Good night.
Nice.
Good night, everybody.
Aye.